Hi, you guys. I have a question for you. Have you ever been so frustrated in your life that you just decide to up and move clear across country? We're going to talk about why I came to that decision and how well, didn't really prepare for it, but did it anyway, and what the results of all of that were. So, this is going to be part one of a two-parter because of all of the details that and took place with all of that. So, for those of you who watched my video, I told you all we're getting fired, or is it? Yeah, I told you we're all getting fired. This is a result of the outcome of when that company, they call them layoffs, but when they let you go and you're not coming back, is it really different from a firing? Okay. I mean, technically it is because you haven't done anything wrong and it's just a company doing what they do. Okay, I get it. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm like, they fired us all. You don't have to necessarily watch that video to get the gist of this one. I just wanted to kind of give you a prelude as to what led up to all of this with my making the decision to get the hell out of here. Now, first of all, I do want to say that when we, meaning any individual, ups or uproots themselves or their families to go to someplace else, you're going to find basically the same issues there. And the reason for that, as we all know, is that we can't run from ourselves. You know, if you haven't changed your habits, if you haven't changed your mentality, if you haven't grown in the different areas where you want to experience growth, then you're just going to a new location with the same old stuff. So that wasn't the case for me, but I wanted to get that up front because I normally, or I usually tell people 99.9% of what happens to us in life happens for one of three reasons. We either allow it, promote it, or create it. So, what we need to do in those instances is see what it is that we're allowing or promoting and creating and decide if we want to continue to do those things and to continue to experience the results of the outcome of that. Now, deciding not to decide is a decision, okay? Just like choosing not to choose is a choice. So we do have options in our lives, even though sometimes we think that our back is against the wall or that we don't have a choice. We really do. You just have to think about alternatives and options and what would be the best thing for you to do. So I said all that to say our decisions sometimes have natural consequences. Like if you go out in the rain without an umbrella, you're going to naturally get wet. Hello. So, in this particular case, I had always wanted to move from a state that had winter months to a state that doesn't, because I was like, I've had over 45 years of ice, rain, sleet, and snow, driving in it, shoveling it, salting it, just cold, wet. And so I did not want to experience that in my later years. So I had always for years been saying, I'm going to move, I'm going to move. And when I say years, you guys, I mean a good 15 or 16 years. So, of course, no one, and they were like, okay. Well, after we had gotten laid off, me and my colleagues at that one place from the previous video that I just mentioned, I had, if you watch that video, you'll know that I had just moved. I just sold my home because the youngest of my children had graduated high school, and I no longer needed a big two-story, three-bedroom, two-bathroom, breakfast nook, fireplace. I didn't need all of that in my own. Well, I didn't need a home that had all of that. And I always think, well, for me, no, I'm not going to get myself in trouble here, but I think that homes should be. I mean, for me to just be in that by myself when a family could be utilizing it, it made more sense to me. So I had sold my home and had just about to move into my new apartment like the week of our firing. Okay, so I was like, "Oh, okay, this isn't going to bode too well." But eventually, I was able to do the move amidst all of the chaos. And of course, you're looking for another job. Well, I was looking for another job after the move. So I'm out, doing what you do when you're looking for another job. And I like to live and work near, or I should say, I like to work near where I live so I don't have to get on three different freeways or go from one city to the other. And that's fine if people like to travel every day like that. That's not me. So I don't like getting lost and I get lost everywhere I go. So I need to be able to see where and know where I'm going. So I had taken this job eventually at a bank, and it was a major bank. It's a national bank. So, okay. And I had to, what, see, there we go. I didn't have a choice. Yeah, you do, you have choices. But I had gotten to a point where I had been off for a while and I really was, I don't want to use the word desperate, but let's use that, getting desperate to get a job. So now you're starting to really like, okay, whatever hours you want me to work, that kind of thing. And I gotten a job at this branch, and I have a very, let's just say, a very, well, kind of impressive resume. So I'm not looking to, I was looking to be closer to the salary that, I had worked my way up to. But you know how these companies are. Well, everyone's coming in as a, what do they call it? Entry level employee. So you can, we have to see what you're made of and all of that. Okay, I get it. But this job was actually quite a bit less than what I had previously, you know, been making it. When I say quite a bit less, I'm talking $10 less an hour, not a day, not a week, an hour. Okay. So I was like, okay, it's just me. The girls are grown and gone. And I'm also kind of a sensible person when it comes to finances. So just to give you an idea of what I mean by that, I don't when my like I'm not into name brand stuff, um Coach purses or Prada or any of that kind of stuff. Um Anything that's functional for me and that works for me. And I'm not a cheap person either, so I wouldn't buy like the lowest on the totem pole for items or anything. But usually like mid grade, so it's not the most expensive because why do I want to make a billionaire, a gazillionaire, okay, when you're barely getting to by yourself? So I wouldn't be the one that's driving a Lexus and I live in the projects, okay? There's nothing wrong with that if people choose to have their priorities in that way. But my thing is my priorities were just different. So anyway, I take this job, and before I take it though, because I'm always negotiating, you know how they they say you got to be able to be willing to walk away from the table. So when I was getting interviewed at this particular place, and I was saying, hey, with my resume, you can see I've been the supervisor, I've been the team lead, I've trained, I've done coaching, you can see the value that I would bring to this company if you were to, elect to employ me. And they were busy saying the same thing that they say to all of us. Well, we have to see first, you have to prove yourself. I'm like, oh, okay, hair sticking up. So that was fine. But then I asked what would be the projectile for me to show them what I bring to the table. So in other words, I didn't want to hear in 5 years you'll be able to do this. No, I'm like, the first 12 months, how are they going to assess what it is the value that I brought to the place, or in 2 years, or in 6 months, or 8 months, like that, that kind of thing. So we talked about that during the interview, and everything was fine. And then I tempted, using that word lightly. Well, I wasn't aggressive, but I did attempt to have them increase my starting salary up front because I was like, I know what I can do, and I know what, you know, value I would bring. But they were not having it. They were like, no, it wouldn't be fair to the others and da 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 da. So I'm like, okay. Well, I had been there for probably about 5 weeks when they approached me to ask if I would be willing to start training the new people coming in because they could see how quickly I had learned everything and the outstanding, workmanship that I provide. And it was a customer service type position. So it was part answering phones and part doing documents and things like that. But they listen to your calls and they're able to see, oh wait, this person knows what they're doing, and they seem to take great pride in it because that's what I do. So that was really cool. Well, it turned out, and I said, yes, I would love to train, the new people coming in, and that way, we're all on the same page, and they can see the skills that would be necessary in order to, do an outstanding job. Well, at some point, I learned that the new people they were hiring, and these people came in, like I said, 5 or 6 weeks after my group of hirees came in, and they were, um, paying these people $4 more an hour than what they had started our group at, which is fine. I mean, companies do what they do. So I asked to meet with the manager, my manager, because again, remember I had talked about this at my interview. So I'm like, if they decided to increase the entry level salary, then the ones that they just hired should also be able to benefit from that. No, no, most people be like, companies aren't going to do that. And I'm like, okay. So anyway, I went to go talk to the lady there, and she was like, well, you had already accepted, the other salary, and reminded her that I was trying to negotiate it at that time as well. And she said that there wouldn't be a lot that she can do about that, which is fine. So I went home that night. If you saw my 8 second one, this that was much later on in life, but it doesn't take me long to say how how long are you going to keep creating this kind of stuff in your life and then experiencing it and then not being happy with it. So I said, you know what? I've always really did want to move. This is the perfect time to do that. My kids are grown, they're gone, they're independent. I wasn't helping them with their phone bill or their lights or their gas or their car note or their car insurance or the rent. I mean, they were capable, independent people. And my youngest, remember, had just graduated and she was out on her own. So I was like, you know what? You could just up and move to that state that you always wanted to be in and just do it. But fear sets in real quickly. I'm like, I know. But I'm not, I have to have a job. You have to have a place to stay. You have, all these things that we have to do. You're thinking about that. But the more I thought about it, and that look on the lady's face when she's like, well, we've already hired the other people and we want you to train them. So now I'm training people who are making more than I am, who don't have the experience I have, who's learning from me. So I was like, no, that's not going to work for me. So I um, called one of my daughters who didn't live in the same state that I did because, she was off to college. But I was like, I am just not happy. I really do want to go ahead and make that move. And so she told me, she said, well, put your resume online. And she said, you're on LinkedIn, right? And I think I wasn't at the time. I was like, LinkedIn, what the hell is that? So she was telling me that, it's for professionals who are looking to look for employment, sometimes change careers or, that kind of thing. So I was like, okay, I can do that. And she said, and also put your resume on monster.com. Okay, you guys, uh, this is really going to tell you how old I am because at this time, monster.com was new. I had never even heard of it. And I said, monster.com, what is that? That sounds like a 2-year old named it. I mean, come on, monster.com. And she said, just upload your resume there, update it and everything. And headhunters and recruiters will be able to see everything. And, you never know what may happen. So I was like, okay, what do I have to lose? So I did that night. And that was on a Thursday. Now, I won't forget this because they called me, you guys, on Friday, the next day. And well, first of all, they didn't call me. They emailed me first, and they were like, "Hey, we saw your resume. We were wondering if you would be interested in, whatever." So I was like, still not trusting it because I'm like monster.com. So I called my daughter and I sent her the information that they had sent me, and she was like, "No, it's legit. It's good. You should give them a call." So I did that, and it was a recruiter from the state that I wanted to move to. And that's what I did. I put in, all that information there that I was looking to move and do that kind of thing. So they were like, your resume is really impressive. You have all of the skills that we're looking for. We were wondering how soon could you be in our state? I was like, oh, geez, this is an actual real offer. So you know, me thinking really quickly, I was like, well, I was planning on being there within the next 4 weeks. Now, remember, I was working at this bank, and so they said, okay, so would you be able to, I don't know what your plans are once you get here, but how soon would you be able to physically come in for an interview? I don't even know where I'm going to be at, so I didn't know that. But I'm like, okay, you got to play it by ear here. So I said, well, if I'm going to be there in the next 4 weeks, I would think that the interview can be that on that, fifth week once I'm there and settled and everything. So we had set something up, and they had gone over, asked me what type of salary I was looking for, and I was like, not what I'm making right now, that's for sure. So I told them if they took a look at my resume, they would see the lead positions that I had and that I was looking to get something that would be commensurate to that skill level. So just to let you guys know, I'm not someone that says I should be making $250,000 a year, but I can't put a paragraph together. Okay. I know what my skills are. I know how those skills should be valued at a company, especially if they're looking for a particular specific position, which I have the skills, the knowledge, and the expertise in. So anyway, we talked about that, and then they said that they would, email me some forms and everything, and have me look at that, and if I had any questions, I can give them a call back. You guys, okay? So remember, I put the I put the information online on a Thursday. They called me on that Friday. That Friday night, I was typing up my resignation letter at this doggone bank. Okay, I was like, there'll be no moss growing under these feet. So but remember, I didn't have any plans. I didn't even know monster.com. I didn't know anything about, you know, really just up and moving. And remember, I had just, well, I was in my apartment and everything. So I didn't have as much stuff as I had when I was in my home. But I was like, oh, geez. So got my wits about me. And I knew that I would need at least two more, you know, paychecks because you got to get airline tickets or well no actually I was thinking of driving to that because I had a car, so I was thinking of driving to that state, but I had a car, so it wasn't a car that can get you far, but I was like, if it gets me there, I'm fine. So that's what I did. I wrote my resignation up to the bank. So that Monday when I went in, turned it in to my supervisor, and I had made a copy for the manager as well. And then probably about later that afternoon, that same manager that I had tried to negotiate with and talk to, and she wanted me to train new people. She had me meet her in her office, and she said, you, you're, you're really going to resign?" And I said, "Yeah." Well, I didn't say yeah. I said, yes, I came to realize that, what you guys were doing here is fine for you. I said, but it wasn't fine for me. I said, I tried to negotiate from the beginning, and I was told I couldn't, that that was not possible. I said, and then they hired another group weeks later and gave them what I was almost what I was asking for, or at least half of that. And I said, and I just didn't think that that was fair to me. And whenever I find that something is not fair to me, it's up to me to change that. I can't ask someone else to change their rules and regulations. It's up to me to make a decision. So she said something to the fact that, oh, we thought that you would be here for a while. I said, yeah, I'm sure you guys did, but I thought that I would be making more, so we're kind of even on that. And that's like I said, yeah, it just had to be right. So she said a 4 week notice. Usually you only need 2 weeks notice. Why 4 weeks? And you know me, you guys, I wasn't going to lie or fabricate or make some phony excuse up. I said, because I need two more paychecks before I move because I've got things I need to do to prepare for it. And she didn't laugh, but she kind of chuckled and she's like, okay, okay, I get it. So, because some people said, don't ever give someone a 4 week notice. They'll walk you out the door right there. But they didn't. They allowed me to give that 4 week notice. I did start training some of the newbies before I left. So that wound up being fun. And then in the interim, what I was doing, you guys, is I had decided that of course I wasn't gonna have enough to move all everything that I had to a new place. And where would I be moving it to? I didn't remember. This is basically no plans. Well, I remembered over the weekend that I had a friend that lived in that state that I was looking to move to. And so I started Googling her, but of course I had her maiden name. I didn't know she'd been married and divorced twice or once, and things had changed. So I, just kind of searching around and everything. And then I happened to see a picture of her with her new name. And so it had some information, her email address and things like that. And it actually had a phone number. So I called her, and you guys, she picked up. Now, when I say a friend, this is someone that I knew in grade school. Now we're both in our 40s. Okay. So the last I would have, yeah, had been a while. And we had kind of kept in touch over the years, but not, you know, not a lot. But she answered the phone, and I was in one time zone, she was in another. But when you're calling someone, you're not even thinking about the time. Well, I wasn't thinking about the time zone, so it was like 10 o'clock my time, and I think one her time, or was it the opposite? But anyway, she was asleep. She was like, "Hello," and I was like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And she said, "I'm fine." And I said, "This is Sherry. Do you remember me?" And she said, "Of course I remember you, Sherry. You were my best friend in grade school." Don't cry right now. Ah, so I was like, you've always told me what a beautiful state you live in and everything, and so much has happened to me in my life right now. I just want to move. I said, do you know any areas that you can, suggest to me that I can look at to move to? And I swear you could hear her sitting bolt upright in her bed. She was like, "Are you kidding?" I said, "No." She said, "You're not going to change your mind." I'm like, No, I've already turned in my resignation." And she said, "You can come and stay with me and my husband first if you like." And she said, and I was like, huh, I don't know if that's a good idea. She said, "No, it's a perfect idea. We're ministers now." And she said, "And now we have a 7 bedroom, 6 bathroom home, and it's so many square feet, and it's in a very nice area." She said, "You at least, until you can get things situated." So I was like, "Okay, if you're sure." I said, "But I tell you what, don't make a decision yet. Speak with your husband and anyone else you may need to speak with, and then we can, go from there." So she said, "I'm not going to change my mind, and I just hope you don't change yours." And I was like, I won't." So then I had to get busy with selling everything in my apartment, and I mean everything, including my paper shredder, scissors, stapler, all my little office supplies I had, all of my kitchen appliances. My thing was, instead of trying to pay to have everything go cross country, it would be simpler for me, especially since I'm going to be staying with someone else anyway, to just sell it all, get that cash, because remember, I needed cash, and go from there. And so at the time I had a car that it was okay, but like I said, a lot of people like, "You're not going to drive that from here to where you're going. That's just not going to work." So I was like, "Yeah, okay." So I actually wound up selling my car to a friend, and then I had a what do they call those when people are selling everything from their house? I can't even think of the word for it now. But when you have those kind of sales, when everything is out, people can come into your apartment and they can just pick and choose what they want and everything. And that's exactly what I did. And I did that for about the first 2 weeks. So I lived in an apartment complex, and you know how you can put a note up by the mailboxes and stuff and say, "Hey, dinette, table set." One of my friends bought my cherry wood bedroom set, so I a lot of friends were like, "We get dibs first, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, just come in and whatever it is you want." And I'm not going to haggle over prices or anything like that. I had to leave. So, I mean, you could negotiate, but I was like, why? But everyone was fair with what they were offering and everything too. So all of that turned out really well. And then that third week, I had packed up just, some clothes, my computer, stuff that I know that I needed, that I couldn't very well put on a doggone plane. And I boxed those things up and sent them to my friend's home so they would be there before I got there. So that way I'm not missing anything or I've got to find out how to locate something or anything like that. So that is part one of this hotel. But I also wanted to say when I realized that this move really was going to be a move, because the people said they wanted to, interview me, and that doesn't mean you're going to get the job, but at least I had that lined up. And then my friend said I could stay with her, so I had that lined up and had already had my 4 weeks, notice in for the other place. I called people and I was like, I'm moving, and they were like, where? And I told them. They said, you always wanted to be there, and I said, yeah. And they were like, but are you sure you're really doing it this time? And I was like, yes. I said I turned in my resignation. I contacted my friend. I put my resume online. Someone has already called me. I mean, I went through the whole thing. So one of my friends, when I called her, and if you looked at I resisted, and now she's my best friend. When I called her, I said, "Hey, Ruby, you already know her name because it's in that other video." I said, "Ruby, I'm moving," and she said, "You're what?" And I said, "I'm moving," and she said, "Where?" And I told her, and she said, "Who told you that?" I'm like, "Who told me that?" I mean, but she was just shocked that I was actually saying I was going to do that. And then I caught this other friend and I was like, hey, and these are people I had known for years, So they were really good friends. And I told her that I was finally moving to where I'd always wanted to be. And she just burst out crying on the phone. She said, I can't believe you're going to leave me. And I was like, I've been talking about this for 18 years. So yeah, okay. But I understood. And then um, I called I called the daughter that told me to put my resume on monster.com. Remember, this one was in college at the time. And it was kind of late where she was at. Or was it late where I was at? Anyway, I called her. Yeah, it was late where I was at. And I called her and I said, hey, mom's going to move. And she was like, what? And I said, I'm moving. And she said, wait, repeat that. And I said, I'm finally moving to where I wanted to be. And she said, let me turn my TV down. It keeps sounding like you're saying you're moving. I'm like, so did you not believe when you told me to put my resume on monster.com that I would do it? But so I think a lot of people were just shocked. And, it's like the boy who cried wolf. You've been saying for years you want to go here, and now, it's finally here. So no one was more shocked than I was. Okay. I knew it was something I wanted to do. I was making these steps like kind of in automatic mode, like, okay, you've turned in this resignation, you've uploaded your resume, you've contacted your friend, those things you automatically are doing and not really thinking about it. But as the time got closer and closer, I was like, oh, geez, this really is happening, and you're creating it. So I was able to get everything together, had my some funds together, and and actually, like I said, it worked out really well because a lot of people came and bought. I mean, I didn't have anything left. When I tell you I sold everything that I had in my possession. And again, remember, I'm not um, connected to things. I'm like, they're like, are you sure you want to give this away? I'm like, it's already gone. Pay for it. Okay. I'm not trying to hold on to 30 years of memories. They're here. Okay. Uh, so that's going to end this particular video. I want to say, remember my mantra: knowledge is in the knowing, but wisdom is in the doing. And the true learning of a lesson is the application of it. So, to my wisdom walkers out there, thank you for continuing to visit my channel. For any new viewers or people that are just coming to the channel, I want to thank you for that. This is Sherry Brantley. The name of my YouTube is Life Lessons Learned. So please leave a comment if any of you have ever all of a sudden decided to move across country, or maybe it wasn't so sudden. Maybe you had more common sense and you planned your move accordingly. Please leave those comments below. I would love to see them and read them and hear what your outcome was and what some experiences you had in doing so. And knowledge for any of us is knowledge for all of us. So, for those of you who are so inclined, please subscribe and come back to visit me soon. Talk to you later. Bye.